Hello and welcome back to the second YouTube video for Behind the Scoreboard podcast. I'm Garrett Smith, and today I'll be diving into the next conference on our conference preview list for the 2023 college football season. We have CUSA or Conference USA. Just some little housekeeping notes first is I have these headphones, not my favorite thing to wear during a video, but my puppy chewed up my other headphones, and then my microphone wasn't working that I had originally. So we make do with what we got. So starting off, Conference USA is in a really interesting position to say the least. They lost six members from last year that have all actually gone on to the American Athletic Conference. They lost Texas San Antonio, North Texas, Alabama Birmingham, Florida Atlantic, Rice, and Charlotte. Now, to make up for these losses, they added Liberty from Independent, New Mexico State from Independent, Jacksonville State from FCS, and Sam Houston State from FCS for this season. Kennesaw State's going to be joining next year, so this 9-team conference won't be lasting that long. And they lost the top two teams, they lost a little bit in the middle, and they lost the worst team in the conference. So really expect the conference this year to be kind of a meat grinder in terms of a lot of parity, I should say. A lot of parity in between the teams. So again, we're going to go to our Hope or Nope segment for every team. I'm going to give you the games to watch, conference value pick, the best bets, and my conference championship prediction. So starting off, we have Western Kentucky. They all have the 2022 Conference USA Newcomer of the Year and quarterback Austin Reed. He put up video games number last year to the tune of over 4,700 yards, 40 touchdowns, 65% completion percentage, and is returning with his top target last year, Malachi Corley, who also had 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns of his own. They led the second best passing offense in the country at 352 yards per game and 7th in the total offense. These dudes call them EA because they're in the game. So it's going to be lighting up the scoreboard every week. The over-unders are going to be high. It's going to be a lot of exciting football for Western Kentucky. Their defense, however, was good last year in the turnover department. They were tied second in the country at 2.3 turnovers forced per game, but they lost a lot. They only have 3 returning starters. Turnover luck changes year to year, so their defense won't be as good, like statistically speaking from that, especially with losing 8 players like that. So a lot to make up for, a lot of high-scoring games as well, probably, with that. Moving on, Middle Tennessee State. Their season starts off on the road at 2 SEC teams, Bama and Missouri, and so they could get banged up early. Could also be some little baptism by fire, but they do have an inexperienced offense, which is what worries me with them. For the Hope, though, they had a very stout defense last year, tied with Western Kentucky at second in the country in turnovers per game forced at 2.3, and they returned 7 of those starters. So their defense is going to be a strength, even if the beginning of the year you look at the numbers, it doesn't look like it. They're just playing SEC teams. So it's going to be a little bit better than what the numbers show. Defense is going to be a solid point for MTSU. Next up, we have Liberty, one of the newcomers in the conference this year, added from Independent. The downside to being a good G5 team is your coach is just eventually going to get poached. Nothing you can really do about it. They lost Hugh Freeze to Auburn. It's the circle of life. So you lost your head coach, not great for you, but circle of life, and it beats firing for underperformance, that's for sure. And it also helps when you have the resources of Liberty to go get one of the other top 5 G5 coaches, so you're also poaching other G5 coaches, and Jamie Chadwell, and quadrupled his salary, in case anybody was wondering. The CSA will probably run through Western Kentucky for at least this year, maybe even the foreseeable short future, at least. And Western Kentucky, as we know, very heavy pass attack. Liberty has arguably the best pass defense in the conference to attempt to slow it down. They also have a week out of conference schedule to, buff up their record. They start off or not at, they start off versus Bowling Green, I apologize, then at Buffalo. And towards the end of the year, they have in-state rival Old Dominion and UMass at home. So they're going to get probably 4 wins, should be 4 wins out of those 4 games right there. However, football is really dependent, more so than any other sport, on scheme and fit. And with the new staff coming in, probably not going to have the best scheme fit. It's going to take them a little bit to gel. And even as Jamie Chadwell, head coach, said, at the end of spring practice, they had barely installed half of the offense in spring. So they may get off into a little, I don't want to say slow start, because their schedule is fairly weak at the beginning, but they may just not be playing at the level at the beginning of the year that they will be at the end of the year once they get some team chemistry and get used to the offense that they're installing. Next up, we have the team that I normally start with on NCAA Dynasty mode is New Mexico State. They were a nice surprise last year after hiring Jerry Kill out of retirement. He retired for health purposes from Minnesota. They had their first winning season since 2017. It's also the last time they were in a conference as well. And also only third winning season this millennium, which is the same as Kansas. Just throwing that out there. And in fact, they were 7-3 against all non-Power 5 teams played last year. They played 3 Power 5 teams at Minnesota, at Wisconsin, and at Missouri. So they only have one Power 5 opponent this year, at Auburn, Week 12. And this offense is going to return 10 starters, including breakout quarterback JUCO Bandit Diego Pavia. So look for exciting things coming out of Mexico State's offense, veteran presence back there. Now, the defense, on the other hand, cause for concern for New Mexico State. They lost a lot of pieces from a solid unit last year. Another team that's just returning 3 starters from a top 30 defense in yards per game and a top 20 defense in passing yards per game allowed. So they're going to have a lot to make up for on the defensive side of the ball. Louisiana Tech. Sonny Cumbie's first full year of coaching, it was a forgettable one. Remember, he was the interim for Texas Tech 2 years ago after they let go of Matt Wells. But he's still super young in the head coaching world at 41. Clearly energetic by being the top recruiter in the conference even after the not-so-great year last year. They added college vet quarterback Hank Bachmeier from Boise State, 29 starts to his name. So games kind of slowed down for him. He's seen a lot, played a lot of football. The offense, which ranked 32nd in the country in passing, is actually probably going to be even higher this year. So that should be improved. And success, it's not unheard of for success at Louisiana Tech. It's not unprecedented. They had 4 9-year wins in a 5-year stretch from 2012 to 2016 and a 10-win season not too long ago in 2019. So it's very possible to have a lot of wins at Louisiana Tech. Now, for the downside of Louisiana Tech, the air raid offenses, which is what Sonny Cumbie runs from the Mike Leach coaching tree, air raid offenses don't tend to help their defenses out. You're throwing the ball up, stopping the clock, incompletions, a lot of quick scores. Defense goes right back out there. The defense for Louisiana Tech last year was 127th in scoring, 129th in rushing, and 125th in yards per game. So they better hope that the 11 defensive transfers help bump those stats up if they even want to consider going bowling. Bringing in 11 guys on defense, almost a dozen, you're gonna find out real quick if these unprecedented times we live in here with numbers like that coming in on transfers. You can turn a program around real quick, or you can sink a program. But good things coming out of Louisiana Tech this year. I'm kind of high on them. Higher higher, especially for the future with the recruiting thing. Sonny's killing it in the conference. UTEP, Texas El-Paso. The O-line is one of the most important groups for a team who is expecting success, in my humble opinion. They're returning 4 starters on offense. Third-year starting QB and Gavin Hardison has over 7,000 career yards passing. And the defense should be a strength for this team as they were tops in the conference last year in yards per game allowed, second in rush yards per game allowed, and they had the top returning team in yards per game allowed in the conference. Now, while Gavin does have experience, last year he only completed 52% of his passes. Just a coin flip. They say 50-50. Coin flip's more 51-49, depending on whatever side's heads up or is up, facing up. Essentially a coin flip to complete a pass. That's not great. And especially when you're factoring in that none of the tools he's throwing to, running backs, wide receivers, are returning. They're all gone. That could drop that number even lower, which is not good. And some coaches in the conference actually think that this could be a prove-it year for Dana Dimmel, the head coach at UTEP, former offensive coordinator at Kansas State. So it's going to be a really interesting year out there for the Miners of UTEP. FIU, Florida International. Very young program. I didn't know this. I was doing some research on them, my due diligence. Didn't know they started football in only 2002. And they started as an FCS. By 2004, 2 years later, they were already in the FBS. However, no coach, including Mario Cristobal and Butch Davis, the only 2 coaches to take him to bowl games, has had a winning record there. And I mean overall, not by season. They've had winning seasons. So the struggles are likely going to continue this year with injuries. They're starting running back towards ACL in spring practice, and 2 days into spring practice, they lost at least 2 transfers, or at least 2 players to the transfer portal. So not a great spring for FIU. The good news, they are returning their starting quarterback, most important position, Grayson James, and a capable defense returning as well. So it's not like he's going to be asked to carry the team and go win them all these games, just has to produce and protect the ball. Also, more long-term, they're in Florida for recruiting purposes, and their last recruiting class was second in the conference, right behind Louisiana Tech. So a lot of upside more down the road, maybe not this year. The 2 newcomers got up, Jacksonville State and Sam Houston State. So Jacksonville State and Jacksonville, Alabama, they're being led by Rich Rodriguez, plenty of experience in FBS and Power 5, so he knows what it takes to be successful at this level. They did play, on the downside, they did play G5 FBS teams in 2022. They're coming up from FCS, remember that. They played a below-average Tulsa team last year and got ran out of the building 54-17. So it could be a big learning curve for them. But the year before, they lost 31-0 versus an 8-4 Alabama Birmingham team. But they did beat 5-7 Florida State the same year. So they do have actually a P5, not even an FBS, but they have a P5 win in the last couple of years. So that's exciting for them. But they also have to step up recruiting. They're last in the conference and 163 nationally. So that means that they're behind multiple FCS teams for being 163. Sam Houston State. Casey Keeler, the head coach at Sam Houston, he may not have FBS experience or P5 experience like Rich Rodriguez, but he's a fantastic coach. He's the only coach to win the FCS championship with 2 different schools, Delaware in 2003 and Sam Houston State in the 2021 season. Because of COVID, they had the weird spring year. Sam Houston State's also in a recruiting hotbed in Houston, and they're pumping it up. They're showing it because they were 3rd in the conference in recruiting and 95 nationally. So they can make some noise and be a quick riser here in Conference USA. They're also returning skill position starters on offense, quarterback, running back, wide receiver. Now, Sam Houston State doesn't have a recent FBS or Power 5 win like Jacksonville State, but they have been playing better teams for their bye games. Two of the first three games this year versus P5 teams, BYU and Houston. So that's not great for them. And they're typically known for their offense at the FCS level, but that struggled last year, their final year down there. And they're losing most of their O line, 4 out of the 5 starters, and the depth will be an issue for them. So it's going to be not probably a great year for Sam Houston State or Jacksonville State making that jump up. As we saw with James Madison, they could shock me and pull James Madison and win 10 games. So that was the hope or note for each team. Next up, we have games to watch. Week 0. Love some Week 0 action. Florida International, FIU at Louisiana Tech. Opening up the season with a conference game with the top 2 recruiting schools in the conference. Always exciting, more different, and way better than waiting multiple weeks to get these matchups. High stakes right out of the gate for 2 teams if they want to contend for the conference. Week 2, UTEP at Northwestern. Fun fact, UTEP hasn't beaten a current P5 opponent since Houston in 2009. They beat Arizona State in 1974 when they were both in the WAC, the Western Athletic Conference. But the last actual win versus a team in what we now call a Power 5 conference was in 1967 in the Sun Bowl versus Ole Miss. Now, turmoil we've all heard about with the Northwestern program, Pat Fitzgerald being terminated. This could lead to UTEP's first Power 5 win since 1967. So could be a big game for UTEP and Dana Dimmel in Evanston. Staying in week 2, we have Middle Tennessee State at Mizzou. Now, I don't know if you guys remember, but MTSU wiped the floor with Miami last year. Is it possible they could stun another Power 5 program? Perhaps. I'm not betting on it, but crazier things have happened. And I also personally would like to see them beat up on Mizzou, even if they win, or even if, Mizzou wins. Just considering K-State plays Missouri the next week. Going down to week 5, Jacksonville State at Sam Houston State. This is going to be a good gauge on which of these FCS teams is more ready at this stage, their first season of FBS. Kind of a nice break for them getting back to playing each other. Week 8, New Mexico State at UTEP. 40 minutes separate these two schools in the war on I-10 rivalry. Rivalry games are always good. Love them. Week 9, Liberty at Western Kentucky. Very well, the 2 conference favorites could be a preview of the Conference USA Conference Championship game. They are, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but even with 9 teams, they are having a Conference Championship game this year. I'm all for that. Week 10, Kennesaw State, who will be joining the conference next year, at Sam Houston State. KSU will know how they stack up when they join the conference next year. Will be a nice barometer and for them to see where they're at right now, what they need to work on before they jump into the FBS ball. Middle Tennessee State, staying in week 10, Middle Tennessee State at New Mexico State. Both of these teams think they have a shot to win the conference this year, and a lot of that will hinge on this game. Don't sleep on this game, MTSU at NMSU. So, best bets. Those were the games to watch. Best bets coming up. Conference championship odds. I kind of shopped around the odds. I looked at DraftKings and Caesars for the best odds as of the 13th of July. Western Kentucky plus 140 on DraftKings. Liberty plus 275 on Caesars. Middle Tennessee State plus 550 on Caesars. Louisiana Tech plus 850 on Caesars. UTEP plus 1400 on Caesars. New Mexico State plus 3500 on DraftKings. Florida International plus 6000 on DraftKings. Jacksonville State and Sam Houston State were unlisted on both. I would think the smart money's on Western Kentucky to win the conference. From a value perspective, I think I got to go with New Mexico State. Plus 3,500, New Mexico State's the best value to win the conference. What you would get back on a team that you would not be completely surprised to win it. I certainly wouldn't be. Um, so I think New Mexico State at plus 3,500 on DraftKings is a good value pick for the conference. Over under win totals. I also shopped these around between DraftKings and Caesars. I really like Western Kentucky over 8 on Caesars, 8.5 on DraftKings. Middle Tennessee State over 6.5 on Caesars. I think that they get to 7 for sure. New Mexico State over 5.5. That's what it is on both of them. FIU, I would take the under on 3.5 at Caesars. They seem like a 3-win team to me. Jacksonville State is at 5. Sam Houston State's at 4. Hammer the under win totals on both of them. Liberty's at 8.5. That's not bad. I could definitely talk myself into the over on Liberty. So I'll change Liberty over 8.5 on Caesars. I don't like the 9 on DraftKings. I think they're probably a 9-win team. So I like the 8.5 over on Caesars for Liberty. Louisiana Tech, 5.5 on DraftKings, 6 on Caesars. UTEP, 5.5. Both of those numbers seem right on for me. I don't have a strong opinion either way on those two. So, just to recap, over 8 Western Kentucky, Liberty over 8.5, Middle Tennessee over 6.5, New Mexico State over 5.5, under 3.5 on FIU, under 5 on Jacksonville State, and under 4 on Sam Houston State. Conference championship prediction, I think I'm just going to go chalk, pretty vanilla. Western Kentucky over Liberty. I think those are probably the two. I'm not even going to say probably. Those are the two best teams in the conference. So my prediction would be Western Kentucky over Liberty for my conference championship game. Again, thanks for watching. Stay tuned. We'll be breaking down another conference next. Please like and subscribe and follow us. Thanks.